All right. Hello again, everyone. It's Laura Glennick, and welcome to our January State Lead Peer Exchange. We're really excited on the TA team to get these started again. Many of you may not know that we meet as a team every Monday, and we have what we call the DEI Technical Assistance Team Exchange. And one of the things we do is brag about what our projects are doing and look to tap into some of you to share with your peers on a peer exchange. So we're really glad today to be featuring some representatives from the Minnesota DEI Round 3 program who are going to talk to us about some resources to implement promising practices for youth with disabilities. Before we get this started, I'm just going to tell you a few things about, and one moment. So what is the State Lead Peer Exchange? And I'm not going to go through all these, but really to impress upon you that it really is your time. We, as your TA team, are just facilitating a forum for all of you to get together. We've heard that over the years that it's a time that you would like to talk. We do have the bi-monthly project leads admin calls, but that's primarily what they are, admin calls. It's not really a chance for all of you to meet, so that's what this is. So during these exchanges, we feature a project who presents on a specific practice that is effectively helping their project to achieve DEI outcomes. And the goal is that from the information that they're sharing, you will learn more about what's going on. So it's an opportunity to provide additional targeted support from your peers. It's a time to focus on a specific topic area and then get different kind of perspectives on similar and diverse state-level issues. I think probably the most effective thing that I've heard on these calls is when all of you, bring up a topic and somebody else talks about the way they do it differently in their state, or they suggest that it's something they've never heard about before and they try it. And then the exchanges go on beyond this call. So the logistics are exactly what we're doing now. I guess that's the easiest way to say. We will hold off until questions and answers until after Lynn and Greg have provided their walkthrough of the presentation. Your phone lines, I've muted all of you, and if you have questions or comments throughout, please do use the chat box, and when we start with the question and answer time, we will look at those comments and questions first, and then we'll also offer an opportunity for you to raise your hand and ask directly. We are going to, starting today, record these presentations. We will send you the PowerPoint, the archived recording, and any supporting materials that are shared by the presenters. We won't post them because, again, this is meant to be informal, but we will send all of this out on the DEI Leads listserv so everybody is aware of it. Just want to let you know, this is the web platform, since we've used it, has been updated, and it includes some additional features. During the presentation, Lynn and Greg are going to point you to examples of plans, profiles, and charts that they have created. Those will be the supporting materials that we will share after, but these are examples, and on the screen may be hard to see. In the upper left, let's see if I can get this to go. In the, okay, Things don't always do what you want. Okay, in the upper right-hand corner above the slide, you should see a circle with a plus and a circle beside it with a minus sign. You can manually adjust your screen size as the presenters go through the presentation. It won't affect the overall presentation, but it will allow you to see everything better. And so with that, I am going to turn the presentation over to DJ Ralston, who is the Technical Assistance Liaison for the Minnesota project. And DJ will introduce our presenters and the topic for today. So DJ, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Laura, and good afternoon, everybody. As Laura mentioned, I serve, or rather have had the pleasure of serving as the TA Liaison for the Minnesota Round 3 DEI project, who happens to be a youth-focused state. However, a lot of the work and some of the things that they are going to share today, I think, could be equally applicable to those that are serving adults or could be adapted to serve adults. So keep that in mind for those of you with the adult project. As I said, I've been working with Minnesota, or have served as their TA liaison, and have had the opportunity to watch as they have developed a number of tools and implement those and see the success that they've had utilizing those to help promote specifically a couple of the strategic service delivery components that Minnesota opted to implement. One of which is the Guidepost for Success, which again is unique to the youth population. However, we have seen some states that are serving adults show an interest. And as a matter of fact, Greg Kaiser, who serves as a DRC in one of the local areas of Minnesota, who will be talking, may even mention how their local area is considering adapting the Guidepost for Success as a framework to serve adults. But in addition, these tools have been created as a means to help promote the implementation of the integrated resource team approach. So to start things off, I'm going to hand it over to the state lead, Lynn Dauma, who will talk about how these resources came about and where they came from and what they are. And then she'll pass it off to Greg Kaiser, who again, as I mentioned, serves as the DRC in one of the local areas. Following their presentation, as is typical with the peer exchange, we'll open the lines and Laura will be moderating that. But in addition to Greg and Lynn, we also have the fortune that the other two DRCs from Minnesota who are also utilizing these tools are on the line as well to help answer those questions. So Lynn, I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you, DJ. As DJ said, I'm Lynn Dauma. I'm one of the two state co-leads for the Minnesota DEI project, and it's been my pleasure to work with 3 great implementation sites to carry out the strategic elements that we set forth in our proposal. Just as a way of a bit of background and context for the information that Greg is going to provide, we have 3 implementation regions, as I mentioned. They're all primarily rural regions, multi-county areas. The largest city in any of the 3 implementation regions would be Rochester, which has a population of just over 100,000. So we are, for the most part, targeting quite rural regions of the state outside of the Twin Cities metro area. And as DJ mentioned, the strategic elements that we are implementing in our project include the Guidepost for Success, the integrated resource teams, and enhanced partnership and collaboration. So we're going to focus primarily on the Guidepost for Success and the integrated resource team as part of our discussion today. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Guidepost for Success, this is just a very brief overview of what the guideposts are. It's a framework that was developed by the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability for Youth to identify what all youth, including youth with disabilities, need to successfully transition from youth to adulthood. And there's those 5 general areas of activity that are the guideposts that we're addressing through our project. We realized that many of our youth counselors were already addressing most, if not all, of these areas when they're working with youth and planning services and assessing their needs. But we also recognized that as part of this project, we needed to really make a conscious and purposeful attention to making sure that all 5 of these areas are addressed with every youth. So as part of the project, we created a couple of tools that would help the youth staff carry out those activities under the 5 guidepost areas. And we worked with one of our key state-level partners that's part of our project, the PACER Center, which has a lot of expertise with the guideposts. They've been involved with the collaborative in developing the guideposts. They have a lot of knowledge about how the guideposts can be applied. They helped us by creating a couple of documents that we're going to talk about today, the youth profile and the youth action plan that we have had all 3 of our local sites using as part of the DEI project. The youth profile, I would say, goes a little bit more with the assessment process, and then the youth action plan ties in more with the service delivery, service strategy development, and the integrated resource team approach. So this is the point where Laura said that some of this information may be hard to see on your screen, so you may want to use those icons at the top to magnify. But this just gives you a general idea of what the youth profile document is. It's a 3-page document. Some of this information is already collected in the regular assessment process for youth that are coming in to the youth workforce system, but we added some things, and we created this document to really touch on the guidepost areas to make sure that we were collecting all the information that was appropriate to help plan services around those guidepost areas. This document is one that's going to be shared following the presentation, so if you want to look at it in further detail or modify it, it's a Word document that we're going to be sharing, so you can take a look at it and change it or adapt it to your needs. The second document, as I mentioned, is the youth action plan, and so this lays out just the 5 general guidepost areas, gives just a sentence or 2 about what that guidepost area is, and then leaves space for the youth counselor or the person working with the youth to develop their service strategy about what activities fit under each of those guidepost areas, and to make sure that all of the 5 areas are addressed in some way through the services that are provided. Now, as I mentioned, all 3 of our local sites have been using these documents to document the use of the guideposts and the services that are being provided. We're asking Greg Kaiser to talk to you now a little bit about some of the ways that his region, the Workforce Service Area 2 in north central Minnesota, has taken these documents a step further and added, modified the youth action plan, and then created another additional document to go along with that to help support them as they implement the IRT process and the other activities that they're doing with their youth. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Greg, and he will walk you through what they've done and the reasons that they've made some changes to these documents to help better serve the youth in their area.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Good afternoon from the frozen tundra of Minnesota. It's a balmy 14 degrees outside, and I wish you were all here to walk along the beach of our Detroit Lake. My name is Greg Kaiser, Disability Resource Coordinator for rural Minnesota STEP. And let me start out by thanking Laura and DJ for this opportunity to discuss a few of our innovations made possible through the DEI. The first tool I'll be discussing, and I'll be going to it in a minute here, was born out of a meeting I had with a vocational rehab manager in our area. During that meeting, I posed the question, if we were able to accomplish one thing together through the DEI, what would you want to achieve? The manager responded by saying, if we accomplish nothing else, creating a single, collaborative plan to eliminate silos and encourage mutual support of common objectives, we would be successful. Along with this collaborative ideal, I discovered that most transition-age youth often had goals but lacked understanding of what steps it would take to get there and the efforts it would take as well. Many goals are unrealized because the path to achieve their success was not clearly identified or communicated to the participant. In many cases, barriers to goal achievement were not anticipated, and this sometimes led to long periods of stalled activity or, in other cases, goal abandonment. So I started to think about how I could make a collaborative plan a reality. and I reached back into my past a little bit, having a background in the United States Army and strategic planning, and I thought of a tool that we used to map out a series of tasks that needed to be accomplished within a required deadline to reach the desired end state of what we called it. The Army called it the way ahead. Through a process of backwards planning, the way ahead illustrated timeline subtasks that needed to be accomplished in order to complete the mission successfully. The timeline was communicated and distributed to all commanders and staff, so every responsible party had a firm grasp of the vision of the organization. It looked a little like this. Now, the U.S. Army used an arrow, but they used a similar concept to design where they started and where they would end up. So this led to what we at Monroe, Minnesota coined as the roadmap for success. An individualized visual tool with a start point, a career goal, and the steps and milestones to achieve those goals. On the slide before you, the participant is a high school student. You can see that here. Okay. He plans to attend North Dakota State College of Science, and he plans to be a diesel mechanic. The process of building the roadmap begins at an initial meeting between the DRC, the Workforce Development Counselor, the participant, and in most cases a parent. Others such as IEP case managers, vocational rehab counselors, county social workers, or anyone who shares the goal of future success for the participant are invited to attend. Once the team is gathered, I provide information to the participant to include, as an example, the roadmap you see in front of you and a checklist example, the exact same Joe Boxer example I'm sharing with you now. Upon agreeing to take advantage of the DEI enhancements presented to them, I begin gathering information about the participants' goals, interests, skills, challenges, and existing support network by utilizing the youth profile shown previously. When I have completed the process of gathering this information, another meeting is set, usually a month out, to discuss the roadmap. During that month, I build the roadmap back in my office in a vacuum, not taking any existing plans into consideration, only the participant's career goal. If the participant is unsure of what career goal they're interested in, that's okay. I simply leave the end goal as a question mark and create a sub-goal of identifying a career path by adding career exploration activities into the roadmap. The reason I start from scratch is because every career goal requires our participants to accomplish certain things in order to reach that goal, regardless of the barriers they face. In addition, through the use of a guidepost for success resource mapping tool developed by the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability, I also identify resource gaps that may need additional attention. Steps to connecting with those resources also become part of this plan. At the start point of the roadmap, right here, you'll see that I identify some things here. One is the school they're attending, a current job they're in, or if they don't have either of those, the agency that they're working with. I also add icons representing what they're currently engaged in. In this case, we have a person who is into trap shooting and who is involved in a youth group at church. During this meeting, each subtask is presented to the participant for approval. The IRT members are encouraged to provide feedback and suggest changes to the roadmap every step of the way. Tasks are added and or deleted as a result of brainstorming and troubleshooting the initial roadmap. Activities in existing plans are incorporated into the roadmap during the brainstorming process. Discussions regarding who will resource what also occurs. Ultimately, the goal is that the participant makes decisions and buys in to the finalized collaborative path. Note that while the end goal remains, the path shown in this slide only goes to a single milestone, and that's high school graduation, as shown right here. In earlier roadmaps, I attempted to lay out a path from start to finish. In other words, from high school to becoming a diesel mechanic. This proved overwhelming for the vast majority of participants we initially did this with. For most, thinking beyond one milestone, such as graduating high school, was too far off to care about. By focusing on one milestone at a time and planning subsequent meetings prior to the accomplishment of that milestone, we have found that the participants are more engaged in the process and take more ownership in the plan. In subsequent meetings, similar to the one that's planned right here, another roadmap would be created with a different start point, but the same career goal, becoming a diesel mechanic. In this example shown, the subtask we would add to the next roadmap would take the participant through college and ultimately to their final goal of becoming that diesel mechanic. Through this process, several positives occur. It provides a great deal of hope to the participants and the family as they are able to see clearly that the path to the goal is doable. It allows the participant to choose his or her own path while getting some valuable practice in self-advocating. It creates an opportunity to collaborate and share resources as the IRT members discuss each step of the roadmap. Lastly, the roadmap gets every stakeholder following the same plan. The next tool was simply a modification of the PACER-created Youth Action Plan, which you have previously seen. I adapted this for 3 reasons. First, when using the original action plan, I found in presenting the plan I was awkward because I think better chronologically rather than categorically. I found that if I'm not comfortable in presenting it, I do not come across as professional as I would like. So the first factor was based solely on my comfort level. Second, I have also found that while some people respond favorably to the visual tool, some are overwhelmed by it and prefer simplicity of a step-by-step process. This, however, was not the driving force behind the modification. The third and most compelling reason was inspired by a participant. After going through the roadmap discussion with a participant and his team, the participant asked, could I get this in a checklist? Feeling the need to provide the requested accommodation and wanting to encourage self-advocacy, I changed the format. As we break this form down, you can see that the top is generally unchanged. The guideposts for success are still clearly highlighted on the Youth Action Plan, the same as they were on the original. You'll also see that the activities, right here, column and activities and resource columns is still present. The expected date or target date is still present, and the responsible party is still present. What we've added is simply a checkbox on the left-hand side and the guidepost on the right-hand side. And what we do is we just put a numerical number or numerical indication of what guideposts will be served by doing that task. So if we go back, the guideposts are numbered, and those numbers correspond with numbers on the checklist. And what this does is it brings a sense of purpose to what the task is doing and what benefit it will be to the participant. So the rest of the form is essentially the same. Each task on the roadmap is represented on the checklist. When all the modifications of the roadmap are completed, the roadmap and the checklist are provided to all IRT members. Those receiving copies of these tools are listed on the bottom of the Youth Action Plan. Here you can see Youth Coordinator, IEP Case Manager, Parents, Worksite Supervisor, and then the participant and the Disability Resource Coordinator. So why both? As workforce development professionals, we often lack familiarity with how our participants learn or which tools will work best for each individual. To no fault of their own, while our staff provide some academic programming, it is typically not enough to determine the learning styles of our participants. This provides our participants with a choice, and in some cases, they actually use both as reinforcing reminders to keep them on the desired path. So before I close, I just want to say one last thing about the path. The path is a good guide. It's not a foolproof path. In some cases, IRTs have been brought back together to adjust roadmaps and if significant life changes occur, or if decisions have been made that make the roadmap obsolete. Any IRT members, including the participant, can call the team back to the planning table to make adjustments to the collaborative roadmap. And if the participant gets off track or loses his path, it works out very well to get the parties back together. In addition to these tools, I have added Rural Minnesota SEP's Guidepost for Success policy to the downloadable materials available to you at the conclusion of the webinar. In this policy, you'll find a youth assessment tool that was adapted to integrate the Guidepost for Success, not just for youth with disabilities, but for all youth in our programs. This assessment is a guided interview that now includes more questions that will help our staff gather information needed to mitigate previously unidentified barriers to employment or post-secondary success. While I won't be covering the assessment today, I want to bring it to your attention because I believe it helps our staff take a more holistic look at all of our participants' needs and not just those that we typically think about as workforce development professionals. I also want to add to what DJ said, and that is that we are planning on incorporating the Guidepost for Success into our adult programming. We haven't figured out how yet, but a lot of the things that the Guidepost for Success stand for or represent are the things that everybody needs. Yes, there are specific things that persons with disabilities need, but ultimately everybody needs school-based preparatory experiences, everybody needs employment experience, everybody needs connecting activities, everybody needs leadership and development programming, and everybody needs family or what we've termed as just some sort of adult mentorship. So I thank you so much for the opportunity to share these tools once again, and DJ, I relinquish the floor back to you.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you so much to both you and Lynn for a very informative presentation. There was a lot of information covered. We're really excited that you guys were able to share all of this with your peers, and I'm sure that there are probably some folks that might have questions or comments. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Laura to talk about the process for how we go about having that discussion. Laura?
Great. Thanks, DJ and Lynn and Greg. I just would like to say, and I say that all the time, I'm really glad that I actually get the opportunity to facilitate these state lead peer exchanges because it really is phenomenal. What each of your projects do that we're able to highlight, kind of that you hone in on, that you take, that you make it your own, which ultimately becomes a more effective tool to not only help you do your job, but also help the workforce system and the end goal, the customer. And Greg, there were certainly some things that you said that I'm going to go back and listen to the recording because I loved when you started out and you said a collaborative plan to eliminate silos and the rest that went with it. I just love that saying, and I'm really excited to share this with Randy Chafkin, the National DEI Program Office. And before I open for questions, the last thing that I want to say, as I was watching you go through the visual roadmap, a light bulb went off, and I thought, that's what the Round 5 project is all about. It's all about kind of the things that you said. There's that starting point, you have a career goal, and the steps to take to achieve it. That probably would be very helpful for those who are using now the career pathways focus. So really, thank you both for this presentation today. So we do want to open it up again. DJ and I shared a bit, but it's really for all of you to talk to Lynn and Greg to find out more. We also have Natalie Amy and Deb Long on the line too. They are from another pilot area within Minnesota, and they're here to talk to you. So we can, I have muted your lines, but I do believe there is a place where you can click on a icon that will allow you to raise your hand. Great, thank you, DJ. Okay, DJ showed an example. You can raise your hand and we can unmute your phone line. You can also submit a question in the chat box. You know, this is a time that it's for you. So if you want to make a comment, it's not meant to be real formal, you know, to say, even to talk about what you might be doing in your state. And DJ, as the host, I do not see the icon. So can you tell everybody where they can find the raised hand icon?
Yeah, so everybody, if you're looking at the list of names, the participant window, just at the bottom of the participant window, there is a raised hand icon, and it's on the left-hand side, and then you'll see audio on the right-hand side. You know, while folks are maybe thinking of some questions or some comments, and I know that there's a couple of youth projects on the line, so I hope that they were able to glean some good information from this. And I would be happy to talk to those states in more detail about Minnesota's, what they've done. But Greg, I did have a question for you. One of the things that I thought was really awesome and that I found very intriguing was your experience in finding that oftentimes you have to start with that career roadmap with just that one goal. So let's say in the instance of graduating high school, as opposed to putting it all the way out to diesel mechanic because you guys were finding that participants were getting overwhelmed. So that makes complete sense to me. My question to you becomes, are you still able, do you find you are still able to incorporate the steps within that achieving that first goal that will help them achieve that larger end goal? I mean, do you have a process for that? Is that part of what you do when working backwards? I'm just curious.
Well, what I do is when I work backwards, I look at, for example, to become a diesel mechanic, I do know that there is going to be some creative job search involved after college. There's going to be the getting through college. So both of those are opportunities that I see to get the integrated resource team back together. But when I look at all of the milestones, yes, they are in the back of my mind, and they are actually part of our youth coordinator's plan. But my focus really is to get them to from milestone to milestone. As I said, I used to do. It came to my attention, and that, you know, what was happening was kids who were 15 years old didn't have the desire to really talk about what they were going to do after high school. They were really interested in just getting through high school. So, you know, getting a driver's license, improving their basic skills so that they could actually get the job that they wanted, and then finally getting out of high school. But what we've done in the past is we've then, prior to graduation, about 4 months prior to graduation, we have another meeting where we'd start talking about what's the transition to college look like once you're in college. Sometimes we'll even do another meeting once they're in college, just as sort of a check on things, because sometimes majors change, those types of things. So.
Okay.
Great. Thanks. I have a question that was submitted in the chat box from Gordon Graff with the Idaho project, which is a round 4 youth project. And Gordon first said, great work, Lynn and Greg. Would you describe some more how the Guideposts for Success resource mapping tool was used with your project?
Sure. In each category or each guidepost, there are questions that you have to ask about things that everybody needs, and then things that persons with disability needs, things that persons with foster care, and then persons with correctional issues. So on the things that apply, I look to ensure that a lot of, whether they need those supports or need those questions to those answers, if they need supports in that area or not, or if they have existing supports already there. I also look at things that to answer if somebody needs housing, for example, once they go off to college. In some cases, colleges around here don't have dormitories for their students. So figuring out the move, who's going to handle the move, those types of things. So that's how I would use the resource mapping tools to identify those things that might turn into problems later on down the road. Certainly under leadership, we look for ways that if the participant isn't engaging in anything, we look for ways that we can engage them. For example, there was a person who wanted to go to school for photography, so we got her involved in a local community photography club. Those types of things. Just a way to get her engaged and get her participating in something other than just doing schoolwork, going home, sitting in front of a TV, those types of things. So then, great. I guess to follow up, one other thing on that is that when I identify those gaps, that turns into a task. So, for example, on the roadmap, you saw that linking up with disability services was on there for the local college. So when we look at those things and we look at, okay, well, that would probably be helpful if they have an IEP now to link up with disability services to see what kind of accommodations they can have in college. So, so that's how I would use it.
Great. Thank you for that, Greg. Okay, so I'm still looking for, since we are waiting for others, I know, again, as DJ had said at the beginning, this is a youth project, and so when we had talked as a team, we also had talked with representatives from the National Collaboratives on Workforce and Disability. And so I wonder if you could, Greg, you said at the end, and I know, Lynn, you had talked about it, can you speak more about in terms of adapting it for adults? Is that more of what PACER's going to take on, and what did that come as a result of? I mean, were people able to see the work that was being done with youth and see the benefit?
Yeah, actually, we had a local team leader suggest that she would like to see the guidepost for success implemented into the adult curriculum. We have currently a certified family development instructor, and that mirrors basically what the guidepost success talks about. And so I see that we could use the family development credential as a path towards implementing the ideals of guidepost for success for adults.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be something really exciting to follow along with. I'm going to, Kathy, Tosh, your hand is up, but you might be in a call-in user. I'm going to, you know what, I'm just going to unmute call-in users, and Kathy, if you can just, okay. There you go, I must have got you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. I just have a comment. I'd like to say that this is a very timely presentation. We're working on the youth project with Round 5, and we're working with our State Department of Special Education as we speak to merge all of our plans. So it's really exciting to see what you've done, Greg, and we will be back in touch with you very soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
I was hoping somebody from the Illinois Round 5 project would chime in. Yeah, I really would think these tools would be beneficial. That's great to hear, yes. Kathy.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, Greg and Lynn, I do not see any additional comments or questions. Again, this was really an excellent presentation, and I'm excited to be able to share copies of the tools that they were sharing with you earlier. You'll either receive an email this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and again, it will include the link to the webinar archive, the PowerPoint presentation itself, and then the tools and resources that Lynn and Greg are kind enough to share with the projects. So we really do appreciate this time for the with the state leads and the ability as a national training team to be able to learn, work with each of you and see the wonderful things that you're doing, but also appreciate your time sharing it with your peers. So with that, DJ, if you don't have anything else to share.
I don't. Just thank you again to Lynn and Greg, and also Deb and Natalie for being on the line. We really appreciated your willingness to share with your peers, and I look forward to seeing what you guys continue to produce.
Great. So thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and you'll get an email soon. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.